Hey kids, howdy, and welcome once again to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. That's me. It's December 16th. We're just coming out of a full moon and Mercury going direct, which I'm sure everybody's very happy about.
Let me tell you, I had some very weird communication last week.
No doubt. In fact, I will talk about this in more length in a minute, but this was a wild retrograde, very bumpy, lots of challenges, partly because Mercury was in a debilitating sign that he does not like being in, Sagittarius. But we are out of that, backward journey woods, and we've actually got a week ahead where Mercury's not making any other transits, so we're not, touching into things that were bothersome in the last couple of weeks. It's a little bit quiet in the realm of Mercury for the week. And we'll recap a little bit about the full moon and Mercury's movement. But first, I want to plug my Astro Overview for 2025. Lots and lots of people are already signing up. Please join me on New Year's Day at 10 a.m. Pacific if you want to spend a few hours with me on New Year's Day and hear and experience this live, or work with the recording. There are enormous handouts this year, and those will be available on the day that I do it live, but also available for you to use all year as a resource and reference point. And I love doing this on New Year's Day. It's been a tradition now. I don't know how many years I've done it actually on New Year's Day, but it's been a couple of years, and I think I'm going to keep doing it on New Year's Day because it's just sort of a fun way of introducing the Astro year for myself. Join me if you will. Get the recording if not. The exchange is only $26.99, and just go to michaellennox.com. The banner is right there in the middle of the page. Get your seat, and I'll see you on New Year's Day. This is an email from Faith. She is asking about progressions, which is one of my favorite aspects of working with astrology. So Faith writes, I understand that the progressed moon changes signs about every 2 years. I have 2 questions about this. What changes when my progressed moon moves into a new sign? And how important is it to be working with where your progressed moon is as opposed to your natal moon when understanding how the astrology is impacting me now? I love working with the progressed chart. In fact, in the old days, in my various chapters where different techniques in astrology would grab me or not, it took me a while in my practice to really appreciate how profound looking at the progressed chart is in terms of understanding your inner growth, evolution through life. Transit astrology, which is what I specialize in, is about how the current geometry is impacting us. And we do that by interpreting where planets are and compare it to the geometry of where the planets were at your birth. That's transits. Progressions describe your inner growth and evolution through life. In fact, progressions are about progress. Progressions progress through life. So what the progressed chart is an algorithm that we apply to the natal chart. It's not an organic thing. Progressions don't follow the solar system at all. We move the planetary placements in the natal chart forward in this very slow rhythm that's based on the Earth orbit. We live in a consciousness where we move around the sun once a year. Every year we have a birthday and grow 1 year older and hopefully wiser. We center on the sun in Western astrology. So we move the sun sign placement 1 degree forward for every year that you're alive. I was born with the sun at 29 degrees of Leo. That means that when I was 1 year old, my progressed sun moved into Virgo, where it stayed for 30 years, moving 1 degree per year. So everything in the chart moves at a pace based on the planet's actual orbit compared to the Earth's orbit, if the Earth orbit is being expressed as moving the sun placement 1 degree for every year. Now, there's all sorts of things that we want to pay attention to in the progressed chart. And one of the reasons why I didn't work with them as much 15 and 20 years ago is that progressions aren't constant and frequent in life because they're reflecting a very slow movement in this algorithmic, equation that I just described. But the juiciest thing, I think, that happens in the progressed chart is called the progressed lunar cycle. So if the sun is moving 1 degree a year, the moon's orbit much, much faster than the Earth around the sun will move by progression much, much faster. So instead of it being 1 degree a year, the moon will change signs in the progressed chart every 2.5 years. So that means from your first breath, you have a moon sign. Well, that's your moon sign placement for the rest of your life. That doesn't change. I'm a Libra moon. I will die a Libra moon, leaning towards forgiveness and harmony and balance and kind of an ease with working with my unconscious impulses, Libra moon. But every 2.5 years, the progressed moon changes signs, and that has an impact with how we move about the world during the 2.5 years that the progressed moon is in the sign in question. In another podcast, I'll talk about the progressed lunar cycle that plays out over 28 years, matching the 4 pillars that the 28-day lunar cycle expresses in a new moon, first quarter, full moon, third quarter kind of consciousness that plays out over 3 decades in our lives. That also is something that is expressed in the progressed chart vis-a-vis the sun's movement and the moon's much faster movement. But what Faith is asking is much more specific. So let's pull our view back into something a little more microcosmic and say that as the progressed moon changes signs, we will have a different experience in the inside of us with how we are relating to our own unconscious impulses during the 2.5 years that the moon is in whatever sign of the progressed chart it's in. Deborah Silverman has the best language to understand this. She calls the progressed moon sign like wearing a pair of colored glasses. And the color in the glasses is the archetypal energy of the progressed moon sign itself. So you're still who you are. Your personality is what it is. Your moon sign reflects how you integrate with your unconscious impulses. And the progressed moon colors how you do that based on the sign it's in. So I'll use myself as an example again. My, natal moon is Libra, as I've said. But my progressed moon has been in Capricorn, and it entered Capricorn at the beginning of 2024. And one of the things that is true and accurate about my world in 2024 is I had to make a big concerted effort in how I teach to move back in the direction of teaching astrology, because back in 2020 and 2021, when I was moved to teach all of my shadow and self-investigation classes, I put teaching astrology on hold And I'm back to it now, and I've been building all year my astrology school. There'll be more building of that next year. So I've been in a kind of building structural stuff for my business, and it's been easier to do for me because my progressed moon all year has been in the sign of accomplishment, steadiness, discipline, focus, and responsibility. If my progressed moon were in Pisces right now, it might be very difficult to focus on accomplishment because my inner sunglass shift would be, floaty and spiritually and, that Piscean sense of yummy, but not good for like discipline and focus and responsibility. So Faith also asked, how important it is to know this. Well, it's a relative question of it's only as important as you wish to use astrology to contextualize your experience. The danger in astrology is to get too sort of left brain caught up in the structural details and the next rule that you just learned and the new structure that you just learned. And that's important to understand astrology, but astrology use happens in the intuitive realms where we're not using the mind to figure things out, but a little bit more of the intuitive nature to interpret stuff. So I don't think it's important that you know where your progressed moon is. But if you do know where your progressed moon is, it's a wonderful opportunity to just self-reflect and ask yourself, are you experiencing what I'm describing? And how might you take better advantage of that if you know it? Then if you can time out when your next progressed moon sign changes, you can work with your own unconscious impulses in a new way based on that progressed moon sign. This is very much making me feel like I've got to do a class on the progressed chart and the progressed moon. So maybe there'll be one next year, but I hope that answers your question, Faith. It's a beautiful consideration to always deepen what astrology can offer. So I just want to do a tiny little recap of the weekend's full moon and Mercury going direct. As we start the week, we're still very much in the full moon energy. This would be, today would be like full moon 2.0, right? Because the full moon was exact yesterday, but we want to think of any lunation as having a definitive 3-day sort of reflection, the day before, the day of, and the day after. So we're still very much in the full moon energy as we enter this week. So keep that in mind, though the moon has moved into Cancer now because the degree point of the full moon was 24 degrees of Gemini. And so we start the week off with a couple of things to mention. One is that the Cancer moon for the first couple of days of the week imply a kind of inhibition or sequester or desire to pull back a little bit from the world. And that's interesting to me because the mind is barely moving, though Mercury is direct, and neither is the body because Mars is still sluggish. Mars is now at 5 degrees of Leo. He turned around at 6, but he hasn't completely moved a single degree since he turned around. So the body's energy isn't moving both cosmically and maybe in our physical experience. We might find ourselves feeling a little sluggish as the week gets started. When we get to the middle of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, then Mars has moved more than a degree since he turned around. He still is not at his usual speed, but we won't feel quite as sluggish. And though Mercury will have a lot of wrap up to do of some pretty dynamically challenging transits that he hit during his backward motion, none of that happens this week. We will talk about what Mercury does next week. And so themes from the last 2.5 weeks are unlikely to rise up this week, but they will come up next week for sure. It's an interesting little energy on Wednesday and Thursday that I think I want to talk about. I've always appreciated the relationship between the Sun and Neptune. Partly because I'm a psychologist, so I'm trained to think about the human experience and the unconscious mind. I was raised by, a mother who talked about the unconscious from as early as, 6, 7, 8 years old. I understood that we had an unconscious that the field of psychology described and that much of our life was, reflected unconscious impulses. And that's Neptune. Neptune invented that we have an unconscious. In fact, it's interesting. Neptune as an outer planet that was discovered much, much later than the inner planets. You know, in ancient astrology, we didn't have a corollary for the unconscious mind because we didn't have a planet that lived there. We might have called Pisces moon the unconscious, but they wouldn't have had that understanding. Today, in our modern world, because of, Freud's popularity in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s of last century, everybody on the planet knows we have an unconscious mind and that it operates more of how we move through the world than our conscious decisions, impact us. I think actually a lot of people don't know that. I love when I say to somebody, hey, I think you might be unconsciously struggling with blah, blah, blah. And they say, no, I'm not. And I will say, I did say
Yeah.
unconsciously, and unconscious really means unconscious. So when the sun and Neptune are harmoniously interacting, we get a beautiful sort of blend of conscious and unconscious in a yummy way. But when they are at odds, we have a bit of a struggle. So right in the middle of the week on Wednesday, the sun and Neptune will square each other, partly because the sun is getting ready to leave the Sagittarius mansion in a couple of days after this square. But we've got this confusion and blurriness on Wednesday. And then as we move into Thursday, Venus will trine Jupiter. So that's love and expansion in a beautiful, harmonious interaction. And if you remember the full moon, a big part of that was the opposition between Mercury and Jupiter in what's called mutual reception. Mercury in Jupiter's sign, Jupiter in Mercury's sign. Well, that opposition is starting to slim down, but it does mean that in the full moon, we were sort of privy to things that unconsciously wanted to be released at this time. That's true of all full moons. But because there was this Mercury retrograde opposing Jupiter retrograde, there was a sense that the bounty and the benefit of the full moon might take a little while to deliver itself to us. Why I'm pointing out the Wednesday, Thursday interesting movement of the sun and then Venus trining Jupiter on Thursday. This setup is the first sort of moment I see of really being able to get some benefit or know the benefit of what's been going on in the full moon energy and really this whole lunar cycle with two personal planets retrograde. The fact that Mercury is now direct is going to make everything about moving through these next couple of weeks a little easier than the week behind us. And then understand that as we move through Wednesday and Thursday, we might be treated to a wisdom in our heart that allows us to tap into the hopeful possibility of the things I love and desire to grow. Venus will grow and expand because I simply desire them to. Jupiter. Makes for a nice couple of days in the middle of the week as well. At 1:20 a.m. on Saturday, December 21st, the sun will move into Capricorn. This is the season change, so it's the beginning of winter. And I always have to laugh because 30 years from an astrologer, I still have to pause and say, is this an equinox or a solstice? It's just the same thing as a lunar eclipse. Is that a full moon or a new moon? It's like I'm a smart man. But I have these little blocks in my intelligence where I don't see things that are obvious. My favorite story about that is working at Playboy for 5 years that was on Beverly and Elm, and next to it was Palm, and next, there's all, and after 5 years, I was like, oh, they're all trees. So it's the same thing with this. It's like we're moving towards what is the winter solstice, and I have to stop every time I'm about to say that to say, is this a solstice or an equinox, and which is which? Anyway, we are moving into the winter solstice, the shortest day in the northern hemisphere, the longest day in the southern hemisphere. I love and honor the equinoxes and solstices, not as a crazy pagan, ceremony person. I will sometimes do a ceremony if life sort of feels like it demands it. But I always acknowledge them for this purpose. Way back before astrology burgeoned on the planet and we were just hunting and gathering, it was the seasonality of the earth that allowed us to store grain, such that not everybody had to hunt or gather. And so people who didn't want to do those things could specialize. As a gay man, I consider myself a two-spirit person, where someone like me 50,000, 40,000, 30,000 years ago would have been, a shaman in the tribe, not wanting to hunt. It's like, I don't want to hunt, but I'll stay back and I'll look up at the sky and I'll figure some things out. So we did. We started looking up at the sky. And by watching these shorter days and longer days and the way they unfolded, people got to see the seasonality, understand it more, and then cultivate human behaviors that matched. So the very first time the human organism could have created an inner life of a connection to the divine started when we looked up. And the first thing we saw was the sun, and over there, the moon. And so the movement of the earth and the sun and the moon is the underpinning of every spiritual idea that's been emerging in the human race long before history ever started. So when I move through an equinox and solstice, whether I'm doing a deep ceremony because my life sort of feels like it ought to be expressed in that way, or if I just do a passing moment where I'll go to my altar, light a candle, and say some sort of a prayer that connects me to the idea of the solstice or the equinox in question, I honor them from this perspective that in my DNA, consciousness that I'm connected to that is just thousands and thousands of years old lives in all of us now. And when we look up, and I mean this literally, when you look up, you're looking at the same sky your ancestors from thousands of years ago looked up and saw. And that's what I'd love you to think about at the equinox, if nothing else. You also want to, when the light is the darkest, find the light within. That's the way we celebrate the winter solstice in the north. Because it's dark outside, we create all of these bright lights internally. Christmas trees are fruited trees, but they're not real fruit. They're like little, LED lights. But we honor the idea of fruit and harvest when there's no harvest out there. Hanukkah lights, Kwanzaa lights are also symbols of internal light when the outside seems darkest. So as you move through next weekend, take a moment somewhere, whether it's to do a rich, deep ceremony in the spirit of the shortest day in the Northern Hemisphere, or you do a passing prayer as I've described. Make sure that you remember to go to whatever looks like an altar in your experience and say, though there is the appearance of the most dark, I know that I never leave or lose my bright connection to spirit now and always, and so it is. Have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have a call-in dreamer from Austin, Texas. Hey, Raina, what you dreaming?
Hi. Okay, so this dream was maybe 2 weeks ago, and it was in the middle of all these kind of house party scenes. So this was like act 3 of the dream, but definitely the most memorable act.
Got it.
So I was like downtown. I grew up in Portland, and so the scene looked like Portland, Oregon, kind of really cloudy, a downtown area where the concrete was wet. And I was with this group of people, and then all of a sudden, everybody behind me kind of started pointing across the street. And I turn around, and they're like backing up, like they're scared of whatever's happening across the street. So I turn, and kind of in this bank of clouds it was like a curtains had drawn in the bank of clouds, and there was a portal. And on the other side of the portal, in this like city scene with all these dark clouds, was the beach, was the ocean. And it was a beautiful blue sky day. And the only other thing other than the ocean that I could see was a shipwreck. So through the portal was a clear day beach and a shipwreck. And everybody's backing up, right? Trying to
Yep.
get away from the portal, pointing at it. And I am inexplicably drawn to the
To
portal.
it, yes.
Yeah. So,
As one would be.
I mean, of course, right? Go check out the portal.
Yeah, my God. Move towards the portal.
So I walk towards it, and then the energy from the portal starts drawing me in. So I'm like being moved towards it, like kind of against my own will, and then it picks me up. Like the energy from the portal lifts me into the air, and then I start shouting, "No, no, no." And it like lifts me and kind of tosses me sideways from, left to right, up and down. I still can't touch the ground, and it's pulling me in, but I'm saying, no way. No, I'm not doing it. And then, so finally, as I'm shouting no, and everybody in the group is looking at me, but I'm not paying attention to them, I say no one more time, and it drops me on the ground. And it drops me, and I stand up and turn around, and the portal's gone. So then it woke me up.
Yeah.
Right? I'm awake, and I'm thinking, oh my God, did I miss out on something? Or did I escape something by not going through this portal? So I've asked a bunch of friends, listen,
Perfect, right?
everybody. I've
Take a
been talking
poll,
about
honey. When in doubt, take a poll.
absolutely.
So, okay, great. So then it's accurate to say that even now there's a kind of uncertainty about it,
Yeah.
about
Yes.
whether you escaped it. What did friends like? Give me a vague sense of the reflection that people offered.
Okay, so my sister was basically like, well, you made a choice. You were given an option, and you made a choice.
And she a practical, pragmatic kind of gal? Is that the natural thing that might come
she's
out of
like
her?
Taurus, very Taurus
Got
energy. And then, a couple of my other friends said, well, of course you wouldn't go through a portal if there was a shipwreck on the other side. But it's still nobody, I haven't gotten like
Yeah, okay.
I still feel unsettled about what the meaning of that was.
Let me start with a principle that I work with always, period, full stop. Dreams are for us,
Yeah.
never against us. I can't imagine a valuable choice to be the unexplored idea, and most people regret the things they didn't do and didn't move towards. So now I have a second layer of why I say this is for you, right? A, dreams in general are showing us things that are positive and beneficial, even when they look scary and we have a no to them. Our dream knows. I'm always going to go, I think this is probably a yes, not a no, just because that's the way psyche expands and explores. We say no out of resistance, and then we say yes when we're ready to surrender. So that's another reason to sort of lean into the idea that there was an important thing that you want to move towards. Okay, so okay. And I haven't even got into the dream yet, right? I'm just starting with, like, in principle, I'm going to lean towards the portal is where you want to go. Third reason would be just self-exploration is the only valuable thing to do in this life, because everything else in terms of success and ambition and accomplishment and relationships and love and energy and children and come from being more aligned internally. The more aligned internally we are, the better everything else external reflects. So from that perspective, the unexplored territory hinders us, and explored territory always makes us bigger and more integrated.
Right.
So that's the third reason to sort of trust the portal is where you want to go. And again, I haven't even gotten to the dream. So let's go into the dream.
Yeah.
You're in a consciousness of sharing your life collectively, right? You're in a cityscape, right? So you're not in something that's deeply intimate and personal. You're in who are you in relationship to how you move about the world in tandem with the world itself.
Right.
But you're not in Austin because Portland is more sort of aligned with what formed you, where you were formed in consciousness, right? If that's where you grew up there, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so we know then we're in consideration of how Raina responds to the world at large based on who she became as a woman turning into an adult.
Yes.
And so then there's the cloudiness and the wetness that is typical of Portland, right? But then we want to interpret that we're in kind of territory of sort of sadness, the way emotionality sort of hinders our life force, right? Motion is, water is, akin to something about our emotional state, if you will. And if you think about a cloudy day, what's a cloudy day? Well, that's when there's a lot of moisture in our clouds. That is symbolic of lots of deep feeling nature in our thoughts, in the way we think and perceive. Wet concretes is the impact of watery emotional. Then I love this thing about the other side of the street.
Yeah.
So here's another reason why the dream tells me you want to move towards the portal. Because we see this thing of the other side of the street as significant in a lot of ways. Why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the other side is the first one, which means there's just an implication. If there's a street to cross, we must do it for the street's sake. The chicken crosses the road for its own sake of crossing the road. So that's something. The sunny side of the street, right? That's another little sort of, colloquialism that comes to me about images that relate to what side of the street you want.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that tells me we want to move across the street towards the portal.
Definitely.
Here's another piece of evidence why. Everyone in your dream is you. So all of those people pointing and backing up are the thoughts you have, the many, many, many thoughts you have that says, don't explore, keep safe, don't cross the street. I can't go there. We don't know what's going to be there. And then your friends validate, a shipwreck means something happened, and I don't know that I want to go in there to find out.
Right.
But even curiosity would say, cross the fucking street.
Right.
So, honey, every time, like I'm layering in, I can't escape that every layer deeper I get, I can validate cross the street. Okay?
Go towards it.
Portal, obvious. A way of consciousness opening up so that you can have a radical shift in the present day that relates to the past.
Okay.
Right? It could be future too, but the reason why I say past is shipwreck means something happened in the past.
Yeah, okay.
So the portal in this dream isn't taking us forward, it's taking us to a past place simultaneous with being in the current place. That's a portal, right? Connecting the dimension of consciousness that you're in when you have the dream. And I've decided, and maybe you agree, that this is about considering the past. And because it's a beach that you see, it is about how your unconscious world, the ocean of the beach, and your conscious world, the land of the beach, are impacted by the past. So there's also a sense of this. You're in a wet, cloudy sort of diminished light environment. And if you go through the portal, it's sunny and yummy. That's another reason that we want to move towards the portal.
It's a bluebird day through the portal.
So what does the shipwreck mean? What do you think? What do you think?
Okay, well, after having listened to you just like unpack all of that, right? I have this opportunity that has landed in my lap, right? That I'm scared of because it's a public-facing opportunity, and I spent the entirety of my 20s living in my car and touring as a folk singer. And it was fun. It was so fun. And
I know that well. I've known people who have done similar things.
It's the best. It
is. It's fabulously vagabondy and
God, it's what I dreamt of doing my whole life, and then I just did it, right? But there's this part of me that felt like I failed at it because I didn't ever get to a point with it where I felt satisfied with the reception that I got.
Ding, ding, ding. So we're going to call the shipwreck the destination of your creative expression that you were originally on, that you are no longer on. It's shipwrecked. It stopped moving. That's the essence of shipwreck, is the ship is supposed to move gliding across our unconscious. That's a creative posture. I'm in the world of consciousness, but I'm skating across the deep ocean of the unconscious. That's like the creative act in action, right?
Right. Yes.
That's what artists do. Whatever your artistry, you're mine too. I consider myself an artist in this realm of perceiving human beings. And it's an action that requires us to be consciously aware, but very near our unconscious, ship crossing the ocean. But the shipwreck means the old journey stopped. It's no longer valid and vibrant.
Well, I have kids.
Your portal says, no, you know how to do this. Just go into the portal and trust that you'll be returned to a ship that's ready to sail now.
Oh, okay.
And of course, we always resist. That's the design of dreams.
Yeah.
So the last thing I'll say to you, which I really want the listening audience to hear, the reason I know you're supposed to move towards the portal is because you shout no.
Okay.
The dream is designed to show you where your no is so you can wake up and say yes.
Right. I was so resistant to it, and it was pulling
you, drawing you, removing your capacity to get away by picking you up into the air.
Right. And then I said no enough, and it said fine.
Fine. That's right.
Whatever.
Right. Yeah. And so I leave you with this. The dream tells us that you're ready and that you're taking the risk. It's the dream's job to give voice to the part of you that would say no, because if we don't know that part, if we pretend it's not true, if we skate over it and aren't authentically aware of our resistance, our fears, and our no, then we're bullshitting ourselves and we'll get, stomach cancer in 30 years because we've encapsulated, all of our, scary feelings and don't express them. All you have to do is know your no so that you can turn towards your yes.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yay. I'm so glad you called it.
I'm so grateful to have been here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.